experience in the industry. He's developed key dev infrastructure pieces during rapid growth of Chrome and launched services from proof of concept to production at Google Cloud scale. After the corporate career, Pawel set out on a mission to help companies level up quality of tech leadership and create more environments where rational and productive colleagues thrive. And what Pawel has to say today will apply for those right from junior engineers all the way to senior leadership. So, Pawel, please rock.
Thank you. So let's talk about crushing your code boss. Seems like that's the thing you want to do. And I'm here to help you achieve that. So a little bit about why would you want to listen to me? Well, I started as an open source contributor to Chrome, and many of you are also contributing to open source projects. It's a very good path. This is the blog post that appeared on December 2008, and that's where we started. As you can see, it took a bit of time. Things always develop. And this is fast forward to today. Going to industry events like Portfolio Collective, advising Gavin Johnson's startup, presenting at History Day, going to Desert Safari in Dubai, many more, but just a little glimpse into like what you can do if you kind of keep improving and developing yourself over a decade. And like it was a journey. I always make those things kind of sound easy, and it's like, oh, of course, no, it was, like we can talk afterwards if you want to. But I'm here to like reassure you, build you up, but also kind of show you what's possible, encourage you, and yeah, make sure it's yours, right? You don't follow someone else's path, you build your own path, and I definitely believe in that. Now here's the high-level framework. I'm a big believer in structure, so I'll give you lots of structure today as well, which you might not have in all environments, right? So they don't tell you kind of everything. I'm going to tell you some things that are generic enough. They should be broadly applicable. So this is the high-level framework, right? You have junior, mid-level, senior staff, and you have problem solution and execution. Generally, when you start out, these should all be clear. And I guess in some environments, it could be interesting. I guess in some cases, this thing could be clear to you, but not clear to your colleagues. And that's actually okay. That's what you bring to the environment, right? If it's unclear to you, then watch out. And but it's never fully clear, right? But that's the progression, sort of, where like more you fill in more things. And let me define some of those terms, right? So let's say execution, right? That's like well-defined tasks. Something needs to be called. Mid-level, it's like a project. So something going on over time, you know how to unblock yourselves. You don't design everything yourself. You talk to some other teams, but like you're not supposed to like fix the company or change the strategy. It's still pretty well defined. As a senior, the way I see it is you can run a new service, build a thing from scratch, deploy that to production. It doesn't fail catastrophically. It's well documented. People can use it. It's kind of like a well-rounded person. That's generally my ballpark. And then staff is typically when you start talking business and you start like really pitching to people, managing budgets, etc. That like, oh, if we do this, then it's really good for company. So you don't get that much told what you do, right? So the problem itself is not clear. You could do many things, right? People are not initially convinced. You should come up with that clarity. Persuade your leaders and your colleagues to make that happen. And you have to start talking to them on your business at that stage. So just a little poll here. So how many of you are looking to advance like from junior to mid-level? All right. Mid-level to senior. Okay. And and senior to staff. Pretty good. All right. So I think we're doing mostly mid-level to senior today. Is that right? Okay, excellent. So we'll figure to that. And here's some examples. I thought, I always like to concretize things. That's also what I bring to those, right? I can read blogs and I will tell you things in the abstract. I think having some concrete is really important. And this is from my journey, right? So junior could be, well, speed up the test launcher, make it parallelize things. Pretty easy, right? Mid-level is like, I have some large Git repos, immersion, handle the just looks, handle the change. It was actually more complicated than that, but I put it in the non-controversial category here. The senior could be like build a CI framework, right? There's no framework, there is a framework, there's some very specific needs. Build bot wasn't enough, you have to build and you have to deploy, and people come to you and I'm like, oh, I have this scenario, I have that scenario, there is change, and so on. And staff is like, well, yeah, identify a problem, we have lots of operational incidents, it's actually losing the company money. This was in finance, I know some of you work in finance. So this was like, if you're not trading like for 10 minutes, it's a serious thing actually. Or if you have to like scramble 20 people and use the time, they're not doing something else. So, and it's like, oh, at Google we solved that problem, but we have to adapt it to a different environment. We have to get people on board, right? So big stuff, stuff is a really interesting level. It's typically a challenge to actually keep performing on that level, by the way. But it also has this element, it's like, you can tell people things, but will they listen to you, right? I guess we all know that problem. Yeah, I'm here to help. People don't always listen to me, and I had to come up with some things. Here's another framework. You will see the slides later, so I won't read everything, but I want to bring your attention to some parts of that. So first of all, it's like staff doesn't necessarily have to write a lot of code. In fact, we often delete code, and that's fine. So if you're thinking, it's like, oh, there's this guy here, and I'm writing so much more code, and I should be getting promoted. Not necessarily. The game just changes, and the levels will goes, and we'll also talk about nuances of that. Another train, and that can also help you position yourself. Maybe you already do some things on the next level, and you didn't know that. Maybe you lag on some things and need to catch up, right? And that will give you the structure on those things. So another few call-outs here. So when you're junior, it's okay to need guidance. And I mean, every question is okay, ask skills. Even if you start a new company, it's the same thing. Just ask all the questions. You have the, first 30 days, maybe 90 days, just ask. The expectation to start independently working is mid-level. It's not like when you're staff, when you're independent. No, it starts pretty early in most environments. They expect that. That doesn't mean you do everything by yourself, by the way. Like you can ask, you can escalate in a thoughtful way, but there's some good ways to do that in bad ways. Right? The idea is like people won't kind of hold your hand, everything, like do this, do that. No, you should be. I tell you that, you go execute, you go ask questions, you unblock yourself. And then stuff is influencing, we also talk about that, right? Like you can tell people things, will they listen to you? That's very important. They don't have to want to listen to you. It's part of the job, right? It's not like just, oh, you have this, authority thing. If you don't have it, it'll be difficult to perform consistently. Anything else? Yeah, let's skip ahead. You can also notice that things like suggesting improvements and leading, it's like, oh, things kind of work, but we can improve them. I've noticed something. If you're pretty mid-level senior, it's kind of that territory. Staff is like, yeah, you kind of overhaul things across organization or company. And then again, communication is a big important part of that, right? So the scope kind of is limited, right? Like, I wouldn't expose junior colleagues like, yeah, go, influence your peers. They already focus on the technical part. But even with level, it's like, yeah, you share ideas, right? So there's kind of this net positive, Oh, how about this? How about that? I've learned this thing, and you share that with the team, right? And these things don't have to be groundbreaking, okay? Like, don't worry, like you're not going to like invent a theory of something in programming. That's okay. But like, read blogs, do something, stay curious, ask questions, right? People really appreciate that, and you're learning faster this way. So I just encourage you, right? Like, don't treat it as a box, like, oh, I have to ask questions. It's like, that's okay. Find a way that works for you. But people notice those things, and it's like part of the job, right? So sometimes like, oh, it's just asking questions. No, it's not. It's like you're a thinker. You're like a cognitive employee, right? So communication is very, very important. We'll keep coming back to that theme. Managing up. Very important. Don't skip it. Like, don't skip it. That's what I will tell myself. It's like, because I had this from stomach, right? And I think, oh, Pawel, you had it easy. No, I haven't, because I thought it's like, well, of course people understand that. How we do hard things. I have good bosses. They're Googlers. They're much smarter than me. They're more experienced. If I see something, of course they do. Not necessarily. Like, don't assume. Don't assume that. Right? Like, of course, don't treat them like this, like, pointy-haired boss from Dilbert, and like, hopefully work for a boss you respect. But remember, like, they're busy, they manage your colleagues, right? They have things, they have their own career, by the way, right? So it's like, it's like, have that awareness that, like, like, we kind of look after ourselves first, and then if you spare capacity, like, good bosses will actually help you, but, help them, in a way, right? Not all bosses are great. They typically feel in the middle. They're not terrible, but, if you can be more active, it'll definitely help. Now, something I would say, and I had to select things for this, right? Like, it's managing up 101, it's not everything on managing up. If they have to ask, it's too late, especially at the higher levels, right? So give them updates. If you're blocked, like, ask them. And you can, even if you say, I'm blocked, and it's like, don't know what to do, it's still better than like, oh, you're supposed to finish this, where's your work, right? So be proactive, kind of ask, try to do that in a better way. And also when you complete things, by the way. It's called closing the loops, like they ask you to do something, report back, hey, it's done. They give you feedback, oh, I started doing this more. So kind of be that proactive person, right? Who doesn't need to be watched, doesn't need to be supervised that much. You start owning your territory, right? And that also increases your confidence, right? So you will see kind of it's working. Think like a captain, that's an idea from another book. But like start anticipating what they want, right? When it comes to promotion, typically, it's not just up to your manager. Like most of my managers told me, it's like, hey, Pawel, if it was up to me, it's like, it's done, right? But typically there's either some calibration or they have meetings with like their director or, and it's like they have to convince them, right? And, if you tell them like, oh, like she's great, and like, of course, like, who knows, right? And sometimes there are other peers like challenging that, right? It's like, well, I want my people promoted, right? So is that really so great? They'll challenge that. Like, what evidence do you have? Can we have something to compare, some numbers or some, things, right? So try to give them that, like someone said something good about you, you accomplished some measurable result, you did some activity, you tick some of those boxes we talked about, right? Like, be prepared. And give them that in an easy form, because they're all super busy. When you're writing the peer reviews, they're all super busy. The more you can help them, it's just in their interest, right? Escalating, there are good articles about that, but just something to think about, right? Like if you're not sure what you're asking, most people say, I don't know what's that. It'll be really hard for them to help you, and it'll probably fall through the cracks. So the more you have, and it's not always easy, right? You kind of learn more when you kind of cross that barrier and like, but try to think about, right? Try to understand it, right? What is it that you want? How does it help the boss? How does it help the business? And then follow up. It's like, oh, you did that, it really helped me, this is what I did as a result. It moved the team forward. And it really, really helps, right? It shows them this look. It's like, oh, I helped them, they helped me, and all that. So show gratitude, of course. I think it's really important. It really changes the atmosphere, in the team when you're not kind of entitled and like, oh, I should be promoted. Of course, I'm the best, and all of those things. And it can feel that way. I felt that way, by the way. And it actually backfires. So if you are like, oh, I'm grateful. It's like I'm learning here. I respect my peers. I respect you. I like the company. I like what we're doing. If you're not there, that's fine, but like strive to, that's probably the first thing, right? Like if you're working for someone you don't respect, you probably want to focus on moving away from that to an environment where you can succeed. Now, this is something I'm a big fan of. Who here heard of the Pygmalion effect? Oh,
Me.
excellent.
I use it with my kids' teachers, by the way. I give them lectures on Pygmalion effect. Look at the kids.
Oh yeah, there are many.
Yeah.
It's a perfect analogy. So you have an advantage if you understand kids. I don't yet, by the way, right? So but the idea is, and it's really really powerful. We kind of raise. It's not automatic, right? I can't like imagine, oh, you're this amazing person, and that will, kind of turn. No. But within a range, right? Let's say, quality of the answers depends on quality of the questions, right? And then if I don't give you the opportunities, how are you supposed to shine, right? There are many of those examples where just having that, people like me, people respect me, people believe in me, they stretch me, they help me, can change from like, if, they'll catch my mistakes and like all of those dynamics, right? It really, really changed the game. So, something I want to highlight, and I had many people confirm that, because, sometimes when you're in a situation, you kind of think, no, it can't be, they're not against me. And sometimes they kind of are. Like this negative lens I talk about in my slides, it's real, and I had people confirm that to me, some much more senior leaders, like VPs at Amazon, places like that. It's like, it could be. If they put you in that box, then, like you can do nothing right. If you happen to do it, it's a fluke. Or maybe it's, you're just well supervised, right? So kudos to your boss, amazing. And they'll kind of continue on that. So watch out, like if you're, like spinning your wheels and it's like, your boss is getting promoted and like, watch out, maybe you did something, maybe you had a weak start, maybe your perception was not optimal, and now maybe you need a fresh start, right? Because you've learned and etc., right? And vice versa, right? When you have a positive lens, right? People view you through a positive lens. They'll forgive you a lot. It's like, yeah, we all make mistakes and all of those things, right? If you handle it right, if they focus on what you accomplished, right? And I will tell you what, like, the thinking is, for leaders, what I tell leaders, right? This is a different talk, but what I tell leaders, it's like, don't focus on mistakes, focus on excellence, right? And again, many people confirm those. It's like, yeah, like, you're bound to, you do more, you make more mistakes, but the ratio is good, right? So, even if you make 1% of mistakes and do like 1,000 of pull requests or whatever, right? Like, there will be some problems. That's okay because they're overshadowed by all the good things you accomplish. And it's like, yeah, if we slow you down, there is no impact, right? Okay, this is what you aim for. It's called the Magic Loop. It's by Ethan Evans, that's the Amazon VP I like referring to. I'm in his community. So, that's probably more advanced, like the staff level, not the junior mid. But, he also says many good things. And it starts with doing your current job well. I highlighted that because if you don't do your current job well, no one will consider your promotion. Okay, so the table stakes is like you have to be recognized. And it's not up to you, by the way, it's up to them, right? If you think, oh, I'm amazing, and then your boss says, well, she has to work on this or that, find out, right? That's why feedback is good, because you know what they think, you might disagree, that gives you the info. Do I change? Do I switch, right? It's very valuable. Now, when it works well, you recognize that you're a strong performer, and then you ask, especially, like mid-level senior, right? Just kind of ask, what can I do? What's on your plate? What keeps you busy? What's important for the company? What's next? stuff is different, and then once you advance through those, then yeah, it's kind of more about you. You would suggest those things, and sometimes you just do those things, right? So there are levels to those, and there is good article when you look up this picture. But yeah, I just ask. You do that, of course. That's the important part, right? If you ask and don't do, you lose. That's very very right, because now you kind of took on this thing. And then there's a look, right? You keep doing that, and you keep getting recognized for that, and it's really really powerful. You will be surprised how many people don't do this. So seriously, like these things all sound simple, but they're really powerful if you implement them. So something I want to give you, it's like, yeah, it's clarity, it's structure. It's not easy, right? It sounds easy, but like we turn to those, right? If you have that, like, what do I do? What do I do? Okay, this is something to aim for. Think how it applies to your situation. Communication. We keep returning to that, but it's very important, and influence as well. But probably more communication, right? Like influence is more like a staff thing. If you try influencing a junior, it doesn't really come quite well, right? It's kind of like what accrues as you. You're not supposed to influence. It'll probably be seen as, oh, of course, your staff colleagues are influencing. You're kind of repeating something they must have said to you. But maybe you'll start saying, it's like, oh, I'm probably good at this, I see something. So, pat yourself on the back, but, realize how these things will be perceived. Something I wish I understood earlier is that people tend to ignore what they don't immediately understand, or it's like, is this relevant to me? I tend to be curious, it's like, I'm in software, but I'm curious about aviation, about economy, about tons of things, right? I come to events like this, and it's like, right, that requires some initiative. Something I learned is, even at great companies, not everybody is like that. People are busy, people are like, checking the email and chatting, and, comment on it what you want. The important part is like, what can you do about that, right? So make it easy for them, because if they just ignore it, it's like as if it never happened. Or worse, right? You're seen as a person who like says some irrelevant things. I can't understand this person, right? So what's this about? You want to have those like highly relevant, like if you say something, people see, oh, I get it, right? So sometimes I want to actually simplify it, right? So they understand. I learned that. I used to speak in a very complex way. I read those books and kind of have those thoughts, but do stage. If they get the simple thing, maybe kind of do some steps. If you start with some big, complex, long thing, it's like, what's that? DLDR, sorry. Another thing is like you start with the main point, so they can scan, right? Is it for me? What do you want? It has to be very important. And then context later. So sometimes what people do is like, oh, there's all the backstory going back to dinosaurs, and it's like, oh, and then the Earth, kind of changed. And then my project started. It's like, no. Here's the thing happening with my project. Here's what I need. Maybe context at the end. They can always ask. Like something I will tell myself. They can always ask, right? Like anticipate some of those questions, but you can't include everything. So you have to prioritize, and you have to stick to the main point. That's something I also struggled with, which was like, oh, there's this, there's that, and like I can also, no, people got to ask, you tell them to do 3 things, they'll do the first, or they'll do the most convenient one, and then it's a mess, so stick to one, it just works better. You think, oh, it's so simple, I have to dumb it down. Yes, you have to dumb it down, keep it simple. That's my advice, and then if you see it working well, if you see people kind of, ramping up, that's fine, but assume they want it simple, they're super breezy. Seek allies. And so again, ideas, especially novel, risky ideas, there is something called social proof. And we'll talk about high agency, but I learned, and again, like this could be different, right? And then there's strengths and weaknesses, right? Like sometimes actually when you start like carve your way, you will see more of those things. I didn't, because for me, it's like, well, of course this is a great idea. I see it and I can pull it off. And it's like, hey, it's obvious. Of course it isn't. And people, when you talk about, oh, we should do this, we should do that, it's forward looking, it's theory, it's not in a book, right? So to many people, they're going to be skeptical, naturally. And again, something I want to emphasize, it's not necessarily because you're a woman, right? Like it's tempting to see, oh, of course, they kind of, Not necessarily. Adopt like a curious and fair mindset. It's just not obvious to my colleagues. I have to gather some allies and like convince them, like socialize the idea, take some time, listen to them, make them feel heard. Like a great way to make people listen to you, just make them feel heard. And I think many of you can become good at that skill. Show up well to bystanders. And that's the same thing, right? Like if you're seen, you say some things people don't get, you say some things that can't be connected with the meeting or with Servant. It's like, whoops, it's like, what's going on? Or you have some conflict with someone, right? And they, you know the history, and maybe someone actually really, really crossed you, and maybe there is some shenanigans going on, and you really want to get at the person. Fair enough, I've been there. And like, there are some really, really bad things happening at companies, and it's like, I've seen it, and I'll believe you. But imagine the bystander, right? I know nothing of those. I think we're decent people in decent company. And then, people are butting heads. It's like now you're the emotional one, and now you're kind of, is this rational behavior? Is this professional? What's going on here, people will think, right? So consider that, right? Consider your perception. Like, don't get like triggered or provoked into something that makes you look bad, because some people actually excel at this. So be warned. Before you suggest changes, right? So let's say, and again, if you're good, you will see those things. Like it's always a must, and seriously, it just is. But you come in to a company, to a team, and then you start suggesting changes. Like we should fix this, or it's like the tools are just terrible. And it's like it doesn't look great. You have decided to join this company. You haven't delivered anything yet, and you now say, "Oh, you should change." Wow, end up right first. Okay. Glue work. Who heard about glue work? Of course. Okay. So we're going to learn about glue work. And I think this is something, like, by the way, this could be your biggest strength, but it also can be a trap. So I'm going to give you some thoughts on that, right? And I think what tends to happen is like you will notice things, you will notice those gaps, right? And you will try to fill them. But sometimes those gaps exist because people don't actually care or they don't actually notice, right? So there's a problem and you fixed it, and you don't tell anyone. It's like people say, "Oh, this is amazing," right? Like it just works. It fixed itself, or like you have a large team, it fixed itself. Okay, awesome. No, you have to claim it. And like sometimes people say, the example they use is like, "I'll just take notes in a meeting," or "I'll take those things." Like, feel free, but no one got promoted for sharing meeting notes, right? So that's the level of glue work. I mean, if you enjoy it, do that. I think some people will appreciate it, but again, remember, it's like nice to have. It's kind of something extra. It's not like a top item, right? It would help you actually, right? Like if you see that helpful and kind of flowing, like that's fine. That's out. But it's not going to be the main thing. Don't see it as the main thing, as like, "Oh, I'm this amazing person, like filling all of those gaps." It's like, yeah, it's nice. And people say it's nice. What I would tell to myself, and I did struggle with glue work, believe it or not, I really did. What I would tell myself now, put your oxygen mask first, right? We get that. We get why, so I'm not going to explain. I'll use that analogy. And it's really how the work works. So what does that mean? You should know how you're evaluated in your role, especially what does it mean to meet expectations at your role. Even at staff, there should be some level of agreement. It's like, well, yeah, if I keep doing what I'm doing, then that's what we need. And this is what the organization needs. Right? At Chrome, for example, we had metrics like, yeah, we need more users, or infrastructure would need, some service level agreements, like things should take no more than 2 hours, things like that. Something measurable, something tangible, something qualitative, right? So we're not supposed to like get people angry and meet their boss, like, "Hey, stop this person from making changes because everything is on fire." And it's like, that's also part of those expectations. But like, yeah, what's measured? What's the one metric you're supposed to watch and move? What were some big rocks, right? Some projects that you're working on. Put those first, right? If you're still free, do those things, they could actually advance your career, but don't sacrifice those top things to the minor things, right? And then, of course, what happens, they actually think, right? I have this big goal, I have to do it, and it's like, oh, here's another thing I need to do. And another, like sometimes this chain, sometimes you need to break that chain, but if it's not clearly related, you have to help people, especially your boss, especially your colleagues, like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm actually trying to do, that goal. Help them connect the dots. It's not obvious. It's obvious to you, it's not obvious to them. So just say, it's like, simple, right? Another thing. Of course, don't be unhelpful. Like, we've all had those colleagues, like, oh, I don't get out of bed for less than 3 bonuses. Have you heard that? It's from like a broccoli man. So it's like, don't be that person. It's really annoying, and it doesn't really work. I haven't seen that. Like, I had colleagues like, I only do things that will get me promoted, and they don't get promoted because it's annoying, right? So tick the boxes, be helpful, be nice, but keep the boundaries. It's like, sorry, I'm busy with this work. I'll help you afterwards, or what should we kick out? Right? Like, I can only do so much. And that can highlight, it's like, oh, there are important things like keeping you busy. We talked about gaps, and again, do their actions show this, right? Like, what's their actions? Because people will say, oh, thank you, this is nice, this is, well done. Great. Do they follow up? And yeah, stuff to us, it's actually more up to you. To this, like, there is some work that needs to be done. You need to pitch it, right? Like, you're supposed, you cannot wait for people like, oh yeah, this is not a big problem, right? No, you're supposed to like be more proactive and persuade people on that. Okay. Let's see, how much time do we have?
7 more minutes.
7, excellent. All right. So, high agency. Shreya Doshi is my go-to person for like product management. I'm trying product for him. He has many good articles, by the way, on things like incompetent leaders and interesting things, or babies in the workplace, and people who behave like babies. So, what's this? Don't be a baby. But understand how to work with them. Something I picked for you now. Is high agency, right? So we have all of those things so far, and their places. I've been in I would say all 3 of those quadrants. I don't think I've been a hog, but you don't want to be there. But I have been a frustrated genius at times. Like, okay. The point of this diagram, and it's an article I encourage you to look up. The point of this was like the best path is to be a go-getter and move to game changer. Right? Like, if you're that frustrated person, like, oh, I'm not getting promoted, they just don't get it, or like all of those thoughts, like, oh, I'm a woman, I need to break the barriers. Like, maybe you are, maybe the problem is somewhere else. I can tell you, I struggled with some of those things as well, and it could be, oh, is it my age, is it my looks, is it my, whatever, is it my country of origin? I mean, again, like, you could get caught up on those things. At some level, you know what? It's like, what can you do? What are your options, right? Like, you can, right? So keep looking for those options, be optimistic, be upbeat, find an environment where you can be. I think community really helps you with that, by the way. Like, when I was stuck, it really helped me to like talk with someone who was like, oh yeah, Pawel, like you actually are onto something, As opposed to, like sometimes companies are incentivized, like, oh, maybe you're not so great, we'll keep paying you the same, like try to save some budget. Right? But if you're a game changer, it's very, very different. I really hope each one of you can be a game changer in all fields. And again, there are levels to this, right? And it's fine. Like, you can really be a game changer in your environment. Check out the article. I highly recommend that. Okay, so one of my favorite slides. So behaviors, and I wanted to do that direct. It's like, you're fired. It can really result in that, and it's especially when you're frustrated. It's really easy to fall, and it sometimes contributes. It could be something you're doing that they will perceive as this. So this slide is about how they'll perceive you, not necessarily how you perceive yourself. And by the way, guilty as charged. I won't tell you which, but I've been in those traps. So it's like, I'm talking to myself here. A couple years later, hey, really, you take notes, you'll be ahead. He says, unclear impact.
I think it's the drama part, isn't it? The third one. I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
In a way, like there's some things about like being a hero and those things that not pettiness, no, but unclear impact to a degree, yeah, confusing, right? I was working on complex problems, right? So it's a skill to describe those complex things, like simply summarize them, even if that's less precise. So yeah, I think we get that, some highlights, right? So throwing your hands up. This is something I deal with sometimes, by the way, right? Like in other fields, let's say real estate, I really hate that. It's like, there is something that needs to be done, like you need to collect money from a tenant or something, and it's like people say, oh, I don't know, they just didn't pay. It's like, well, it's your job, like go after them, follow up. Don't say, oh, it just happened. It looks like, right, throwing your hands up. And it's like, no, try to own it. Try to say, here's what happened, and here's what I'm doing about it. I love the format, right? Still tell them what happened, what the problem is, and here's what I'm doing about it that can really change the game. Or like show that you're, not just like throwing it over to them. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's your problem now. And it's like, oh, they have, so many problems already, right? So, watch out for that. But again, drama, pettiness, don't be dragged to that. I would say, it's easy to be, like someone's really annoying, someone's kind of doing those like win-lose or kind of taking jobs at the, I won't name all of those things. And then you want to hit back. And it's like, don't, like maybe move away, maybe just, it's much more peaceful with the right people. Again, something to watch out for is like excuses or blaming, oh, it's just my GitLab crashed, or, well, yeah, what could you have done, right? Like try to demonstrate that, well, things happen, but then you stay on top. And yeah, I'll skip some nuances, and then blocking things and being rigid, right? Like we all know those people, it's like you have to do things exactly my way. So especially at senior and staff class, right? And it's like you will probably be good on your judgment and probably really care, and then you'll see people doing things differently. So, I always encourage people to have that shift. It's like, would I have done it exactly the same way? Like, does it work? Does it make sense? Can I be convinced? And it's harder to verify, right? Like we often insist more because it's like, oh yeah, now I can see it. I can follow it. It's easier for me. But if you like try to change everyone, it really generates a lot of friction. And people are not you. So try to have some principles, try to be predictable in that way, like what do you care about, so people can, submit work that's likely to be accepted by you. I could go on that, but I guess we understand, right? Like don't be that annoying person, like, changes everything, and there's like 5% gain, it's more optimal, and showing off. No one appreciates that. I'm serious about that. Like, what people appreciate is like, it's easy to work with you. And then when something really serious, you're going to flag it, and people say, oh, thank you for finding this bug. Now I won't cause an incident, right? So that's the sort of thing you want and not want. Know it all. Oh, I've been there. Oh, they don't get it. I'm just smart. You will stand out more in a strong team. I've learned this. I was thinking, oh, if I'm better at something, then I will stand out. Maybe. But if, people who are performing well, who don't feel threatened by you, will actually help you more and they'll recognize you more. And people who are not performing, they have own troubles, they'll probably try to blame you. It's just not worth the trouble. Like, higher is actually safer, it's more fulfilling, just go higher. That's my thing. Okay. And then high performing behaviors. We'll talk about that, but take a quick look. This is colleague B, this is colleague A, right? It's a very high contrast. Try to be colleague B. I want to work with colleague B, I don't want to work with colleague A. This is the main point, right? So I kind of made it very, very stark. But yeah, clear answer. If Elon Musk comes to you, what did you do last week? Make sure you have a clear answer. And you did something interesting, and you did something impactful. Well, I was on my GitHub and open it. No, like make sure it's something that moves the company, that people get excited write about. Could be a blog, by the way. Like maybe you read something interesting, maybe you shared something interesting, maybe like just be ready with that and make sure it's nice, cogent, compelling. Communicate early, demonstrate practical trade-offs, right? So again, this is like being rigid. It's like sometimes there's no strictly best solution. Like accept that and then demonstrate. It's like like we're sacrificing speed or we're accept trade-offs essentially, right? I had those colleagues going loops and loops and trying to get the best solution. It never comes. And go in circles. Just build people up, raise the energy. And you might think, oh no, I'm helping my colleagues and they're competing. No. People at the bottom compete, people at the top cooperate. You will get further ahead if you help them. Like if you actually promote a good colleague, they'll probably want you promoted next. I've been there and it's like people fight and like, no, I want to be first. Like, dude, like you've wasted a year, you wasted 2 years just fighting and no one is promoted. Okay? Seek allies, that's important, right? So it's a team sport. Progress is better than perfection. Again, that goes to trade-offs and all of those things. And you can get there in stages, right? Like sometimes the idea is like, there was really a problem. But you know what? It's like you don't do it in one chunk. You kind of accept some caveats and it's like, it's terrible. But you set that, you commit that, you deploy that, and then it goes stage 2, stage 3, stage 5. Some useful resources. Feel free to grab that. I will share that afterwards. But I found something I really believe will help you massively. If you read those things, if you follow those people, then these are great. And especially like mid to senior, this will be perfect. Senior stuff above, there's even events. Like there are many, we will discover them, of course. Okay. And then you can do, if I was